So as I mentioned, we're going to be offering a lot more plans, a total of 6 plans. We'll talk about the dental plan and the vision plan and all of those as well briefly. The good news is those aren't changing very much. So on the medical plan, we're going to talk briefly about navigating healthcare. As Scott mentioned, with the Affordable Care Act, it's putting a lot more pressure on businesses, and we're just going to talk about, with all the time we spent on it this year, kind of how we've navigated that and come to these 6 plans. We're offering 4 HSA plans and 2 copay plans. The costs, they range from, as I mentioned, less expensive than what we're spending now to more expensive, and you can really just kind of pick the plan that fits you and your family best. And we're going to go through some scenarios to help you figure out which plan may be the best for you. Now, I would also point out these plans, it wasn't like Scott and Marlise got to just pick these exact 6 plans. Blue Cross has put together this package, and we're going to talk about this. It's called a private exchange. So while we didn't get to pick the exact 6 plans, we got control over what package we got to choose. And so it wasn't like they got to say, we want 4 HSA and 2 copay. That's what came in this package. And I'll talk more about why that's important. So the dental plan, staying the same. It's with Delta Dental, exact same benefits. There was roughly a 3% increase. If you have employee only, it's less than $1 per month or less than 50 cents per pay period. Vision, staying the exact same with VSP, same benefits, same payroll deductions. Lincoln Financial's benefits, so the short-term disability and long-term disability, the company paid, there's no changes. They're going to continue to pay for those benefits for all the employees here. On the STD buy-up, if you have that, there's a small increase. It's a 10% increase across that. And so if you're spending $20 per month on it right now, it's going to be $22.
They've already been notified.
You've already been notified of that, and that's the buy-up
life insurance.
STD.
And life insurance birthdays.
And if you, of course, every year life insurance, as you get older, if you move into a new age bracket, that increases just like it always has. On the short-term buy-up, if you want to add that this year, you have to fill out paperwork. Just like in the past, it's not an open enrollment. It's not a true open enrollment. So if you're not a new hire and you've been on the plan already, if you try to add short-term disability buy-up, it just requires evidence of insurability or paperwork. If you currently have it, you just get to renew it as is. Same with the voluntary life. If you currently have it, you can just maintain that. This is an active enrollment, so we need everybody to enroll, and you simply do that by going into the Bernie portal, making your selections, and then clicking submit, and that will go to Marlise and to the carriers and to payroll. We need everybody to do that by
December 12th.
Thanks, Marlise.
You're welcome.
We skipped ahead to navigating healthcare. So the next slide after this is going to be talking about how we've navigated healthcare. With the healthcare reform and the ACA, continuing to increase costs, right? If you've read anything in the news, like Blue Cross Blue Shield's individual plans went up 20% this year. We've been battling increases every single year, and we've actually been able to maintain the exact same plan, or very close to the exact same plan, for the last 5 years, for as long as I've been coming and doing these meetings. But we've had the same, pretty much 2 plans that entire time. And so we see healthcare moving to a direction where just offering 2 plans may not be the best fit for any one company. And so instead, we're moving in a direction of, let's take up, how much are we spending altogether? And so we put, pen to paper, came up with those numbers, and instead of just picking 2 plans and just showing you how much we payroll deduct, instead we can continue to contribute exactly what we're spending now, or actually more. We're spending a little bit more than what we did last year. And we're going to let you pick what plan is best for you. And that model and what we're moving towards is called a private exchange. And so all of these plans meet the healthcare reform, ACA, requirements, so that you would never be penalized as an individual for having any one of these plans. And being on the front end in a very entrepreneurial group, Howell Allen continues to offer great benefits, and they're really on the front end of this, private exchange type model. I know you'll be hearing more about it from other people who you may work with, or coworkers or friends, talking about what kind of benefits they get offered. But with the Affordable Care Act taking away so much flexibility from what employers used to be able to do, and that things are very siloed and you can only do so many things, this is an opportunity to be able to add more flexibility by giving more choice and more options. So I'm going to take a few minutes and talk through the page that you all have in front of you. It's the 6 plans that we're offering, and at the top it talks about private exchange. What we've listed here is the prior year options with the copay and HSA. Those are no longer being offered, right? Those are there for reference purposes. And then we've listed out the current year private exchange options. There's 6 options here, and what we're going to do is talk through them, but then also go through 4 scenarios to talk about how these plans work and which plan would be best depending on your healthcare scenario. So we've broken this into 4 boxes. Starts with general information, and we'll talk through each box. You know, first under general information, maybe one of the most important things about the Affordable Care Act that's not talked about very much is network. And so we're continuing to offer the S network, which is the primary network that over half of everybody had here. And so that's the most relevant network on this package of private exchange. There is a P network option as well if you want to continue on the P network. There hasn't been any changes in S&P since last year. So if you like the network you're in, you can continue to stay in that network, and you'll be able to keep the doctors that you've had in that network. S is still select, P is still preferred, and nothing's really changed amongst those unless you've gotten a specific letter from your doctor. Just to highlight the plans, the only plan that's the P network is Plan 4. All of the rest, 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, are going to be S network plans for simplicity. The next row says preventive services. We just want to highlight here that every single plan covers preventive services at 100%. So that's your wellness visits, your annual physicals, well-woman exams, all of your children's immunization shots. Those are all covered at 100%. Then HSA eligible. And so as you know, we've been working with HSAs for the last 5 years. Health savings accounts give you the ability, we'll talk more about these, but put the money in tax-free to spend on medical expenses. Plan 3, 4, 5, and 6 are all HSA eligible. Plan 1 and 2 are not HSA eligible.
But FSA.
But they are FSA eligible, and you'll be able to elect an FSA if you want to continue to use that. The last row here says embedded deductible. And that is probably one of the more complicated, ideas around health insurance. But if you've been in these meetings before, you know that there's a difference in an embedded and a shared deductible. Embedded means that if you have employee spouse, employee child, or family coverage, every person in that family gets their own individual deductible. So that caps them at the individual amount in case they had a lot of expenses. Shared means there's a family deductible, which we'll talk about in a second, and any one person can go all the way up to that family deductible. So they may have a lot more liability on that one person. Plan 1 and 2 have embedded deductibles. Plan 3, 4, 5, and 6 have shared deductibles. So that could be really important. It's only important to people who have employee, spouse, employee, child, or family. If you have individual, it doesn't matter, but if you have employee, spouse, employee, child, or family, it could affect you. And if you'd like to talk more about it, let's get together after this meeting to make sure that you get the right plan. The next box is the green box. It's talking about potential expenses that you could pay for that are in-network expenses. And this is really important. So these are the bigger expenses. These are expenses like inpatient or outpatient surgeries, an MRI or X-ray. These are the kind of expenses that you can incur that are counting towards your deductible. So, looking across these, we've got on the first plan, for example, a $2,500 deductible for an individual. For the family, it's $5,000. That means employee, spouse, employee, child, or family is $5,000. Just like in the past, the deductible for employee only and then for family is always double. So that's the $5,000 number. So if you look across that row to Plan 2, Plan 3, Plan 4, it's just giving you the deductible for all of those amounts on those plans. Again, that's the amount you'd be responsible for before your insurance kicks in and starts paying anything on deductible expenses. Now, probably one of the biggest changes this year is the next row, and that talks about co-insurance. Co-insurance is the amount the insurance company starts paying once you've reached your deductible. So once you reach that deductible amount, Blue Cross starts paying this amount listed. So on all of these plans, it's 80%, which is becoming actually really rare. This is a really good plan, meaning you would only pay 20%. And other plans are starting to go to 50-50. None of them here, so you would just pay 20%. Blue Cross is going to pay 80%. You would pay 20% of expenses until you reach what's called your out-of-pocket limit. Out-of-pocket limit is the most you could spend any given year. Now, all of these plans, again, with more choice, have different out-of-pocket limits. Just to highlight plan 1 here, it's $5,000 for an individual. And just like in the past, and just like always, the out-of-pocket limit for employee, spouse, employee, child, or family is double. Just like it always has been from previous year plans. And so as we look across this, and we'll go through some scenarios, there's certain plans where you would have a little bit more risk, especially as you move down to plan 6, right? You're going to take on a higher deductible and a higher out-of-pocket. There may be really good situations for you to do that. We'll talk about those in scenarios. Because in those situations, you're going to spend a lot less every pay period for that plan. So these are geared and set up in a way where we've got the most expensive first, and in theory, most coverage, where we get down to less expensive plans with less coverage. And depending on what you need, we'll be able to help you get the plan that fits you best. I'm going to move on down to this blue box where we talk about expenses that don't count towards your deductible but do count towards your out-of-pocket. Now this is important because over the last few years we've talked about with HSAs, with the HSA plan, every medical expense that you have, so plan 3, 4, 5, and 6, all of those plans have expenses that count towards the deductible. That's things like your office visits, prescription drugs, emergency room. Any expense you incur counts towards that deductible, and once you reach your deductible, your insurance kicks in. The expenses that don't count towards your deductible are things like copays. So plan 1 and 2 are the copay or traditional plans. That's why they're called copay plan at the top. For office visits, they have a different copay string, either 30 or 50 for primary or specialist on plan 1, 20 or 40 for primary or specialist on plan 2. Again, that's how much you pay when you go to the doctor's office. Those amounts don't count towards your deductible. Just to stay on the copay plans, also those plans have a string of copays for prescription drugs, $10 for generic, $35 for preferred, $50 for non-preferred drugs. Similar to what you've had in the past, actually a little bit better.
But on the 1 and the 2, those don't count towards the deductible, right?
But they don't count towards the deductible, exactly right.
Okay.
The last row there on plan 1 and 2 talk about the emergency room. On the emergency room, it's a $250 copay on plan 1 or 2. Do want to point out there that it's only $250 if they're able to provide you the services you need in the emergency room and you're not admitted. If you walk into the emergency room and they admit you, it immediately starts becoming a deductible expense. They're going to charge you more than $250. It's going to count towards that $2,500 deductible. So that's plan 1 and 2. Some things to highlight about plan 3, 4, and 5, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Those are HSA plans, so the doctor's rates there, it says deductible coinsurance, and if you've been to these meetings in the past, I would just assume that each doctor's visit is going to be between $90 and $100. Right? It's the negotiated discounted rate for that office visit. And if you go to like a Walgreens clinic, then it's probably less expensive than an actual primary care. It could be. And so people are encouraged to shop around or use their HSA for those dollars. The next row on the prescription drugs, again, prescription drugs are deductible coinsurance, but there's a new type of prescription drug called preventive prescription drugs. I've got a list that's about 7 pages long here. I've got 5 of these with me, and this list is in the Bernie portal under each HSA plan. For one of these preventive drugs, instead of paying the negotiated rate, which could be pretty high if it's not a generic, if it's on that list, you would either pay $3, $25, or $50. So there's a certain list of preventive drugs that you would just pay a copay for. If it's not on that list, it's still going to cost exactly what it's been costing before, and it counts towards your deductible and coinsurance. And then finally, under the ER, on the HSA plan, every expense that you have just immediately starts counting towards the deductible. This last box, we're pointing this out because, with the Affordable Care Act, we see networks narrowing. Now, we haven't had any narrowing here because it's still the S&P. But there's carriers coming out with narrower networks, and we want people to be aware of that if they ever go outside of the Howell Allen plan or the plans change. Always make sure that your doctor's in network. Now, these out-of-network benefits work just like they have in the past, where the deductible for an out-of-network benefit is double your in-network, and the out-of-pocket for out-of-network is triple what your in-network is. So it's very expensive to go out-of-network before your insurance starts to kick in and pay anything. The other thing I would point out that some people don't know is if you start to go out of network for expenses, that out of network expense is separate. It's a completely separate bucket from your in-network expense. So let's say you've hit your in-network deductible one year, and then you go to somebody who doesn't accept insurance. Maybe it's a psychiatrist or a chiropractor. Often those are services that aren't included as in-network. And you're like, I've hit my deductible, it should be covered. But if they don't bill insurance and they're not in-network, you'd be just accumulating an out-of-network deductible in addition to your in-network deductible. Is that okay explaining all that? So I am going to pause here because we've been through this pretty quickly, and there's 4 boxes and a lot of information. I know it's really dry, so thank you for bearing with me through that. Any questions at this point? Below that, it lists the cost for each of the plans. And I'm not going to go through each one of these line by line, but these are the per pay period deduction amounts for the health plan. As you'll see, as you get to plan 6, it's less expensive than last year, which is great. That might be a really good fit for a lot of people. Also, the copay plans cost less than last year, which is great. Also, the copay plans have a much lower deductible than last year, which is great. So if your copay plan is what's the best fit for you, which we're about to talk about, it costs less than last year and it's got a lower deductible. On the HSA plan, we're offering much different plans. One of them has a lower deductible than last year, so your coverage would kick in earlier. And then some of them cost less than last year. So I'm going to talk through 4 scenarios really quick, and then kind of put these plans into different categories. First, what if I have the scenarios are going to go from low medical expenses to high medical expenses. What if I have a year with low medical expenses? If you traditionally or historically have a year with low medical expenses, it's in your best interest to pay as little as possible for your healthcare plan, right? Because you typically don't use many healthcare services. Now, if you choose the least expensive plan, it's the S network. If you do need to use the doctor, it's the same network of doctors and providers as the other S network plans. Plus, with that option 6, your employer puts $600 or $1,200 into the HSA. $600 for individuals, $1,200 for families. So, and we'll talk more about that when we get to the HSA slide. In that HSA, you can choose to contribute to it tax-free, just like you always have. So in this scenario, like if you have a year with low medical expenses, you'll want to choose option 6 or option 5. You want to choose that because, one, the company gives you $600. If you're employee only and you choose option 6, you actually make money by being on the plan. You paid $5 per pay period, $10 a month. They gave you $50 a month to be on that plan. That's money that you can save and use for future medical expenses if you ever have them. And then the amount of money that you save every 2 weeks versus buying a more expensive plan, if you just put that into the HSA, you'll more than save the difference in the cost of your health care plan. So you'd want to try to avoid option 1 or 2. You'd spend at least $500 more per year on that plan that you wouldn't actually be using the cost of the coverage. And so I've just taken the cost of the plans and kind of added that all up and said, if you chose 1 or 2, you'd spend at least $500 more than option 5 or 6. So some people say, well, Kraft, that's great. I usually don't have very many medical expenses, but I'm accident prone. Or maybe I have family coverage and my husband's accident prone. Or I've got a kid on the plan and they play sports and sometimes things come up. So in that case, if you're worried about something happening like an accident, option 3 for the S network / 4 for the P network would give you more coverage in case something did happen. It would kind of be a balance in between option 6 and option 1 to give you that additional level of coverage in case something did happen. In the next scenario, what we're going to look at is if somebody has 2 monthly maintenance medications, but really no other cost. So you may have 1 or 2 maintenance medications that you take, but you don't have to go to the doctor to get them refilled. You either can call them in to get them refilled, or they write you a year-long prescription, or maybe 6 months, and you can just call that in instead of having to go and pay a copay every time you go to the doctor. So in this case, we're assuming this is a preferred drug, that middle tier, not generic, not brand, but in the middle. We've got $35 for each one on that, either plan 1 or 2. But on plan 3, 4, 5, or 6, it's an HSA plan. So we're gonna assume it's on the top end and it's $75 for each one of those drugs, because it could be $75 in a middle tier drug. This would be a scenario where you'd want to choose option 1 or 2, because that additional cost of the prescription drug on the HSA plan you'd be better off paying more in premium and paying less for that prescription drug each month. So for example, your total expenses on plan 1 or 2 would be $1,500 or $1,600 a year. You know, $840 of that would be your prescription drugs, the rest would be premiums. And even though you'd spend a little bit more on premiums, you'd save money overall on your total monthly expenses. You know, on option 3 or 4, which is the P network, you'd be at over $4,000 in expenses because of how much you paid for the prescription drugs and the premiums. And then on 5 and 6, you'd be close to $1,500 after the $600 HSA contribution, but that $600 HSA contribution comes in each month. And you know, the cash flow issue, you'd spend a lot more in January, February, and March than you would on the copay plan. So some people who want to spend less out of their checking account each month prefer to know how much it's going to be when they go to the pharmacy. And in that case, you'd be better off choosing plan 1 or 2 with the copays, just to know how much it's going to be each time you win. And so scenario 3, a few more medical expenses, and maybe the most complicated scenario, is what if I have the same 2 monthly maintenance medications that I did in the last scenario, but I also have to go to the doctor about once a month to get those prescriptions refilled, or I'm going to a couple of doctors, maybe quarterly, and so I have to pay a copay or a negotiated rate for each one of those visits. And so for the 10 visits on the HSA plans 3, 4, 5, and 6, we're assuming you paid $100 for each office visit, that negotiated rate. And on the copay plans, we're just using a $25 copay. It's kind of in the middle of the two. It's either 20 or 30, so we're using 25 times 10. And then blood work, you had to have a lab test or blood work done once that year for $800. So you know, this is kind of a tricky scenario. There's a lot of moving parts. And so what I've done here is listed out, right, 3 different plans, or the plans in all different scenarios. I've listed the plans out in all the different scenarios. And why I've done this, if you look at plan 1, 2, 3, and 4, they come within about $200 of each other for the whole year of medical expenses. Plan 1 is $2,751. Plan 2 is $2,625. Plan 3 is $2,832. I'm pointing that out to say, you know, we're within $100 to $200 of each other of total expenses. So like, which plan is going to be the best is really going to come down to your scenario. So let's talk through that scenario. If this is one similar to you, make sure you get the right plan. The second thing I'd point out about this is that these plans differ greatly in how you get to that number. Meaning, on plan number 3, the HSA plan, you would get to that $1,700 deductible pretty quick in this scenario because there's no copays. So you'd be paying for those prescription drugs and office visits right out of your pocket very, very soon. Now you might hit that $1,700 deductible in April or May. And at that point, your insurance kicks in and starts paying 80%. And so then you would start paying a lot less for your expenses. But getting to that deductible could be really hard cash flow wise. On plan option 1 and 2 with the copays, you'd spend about the same amount over the course of the year. But in January, February, March, you know exactly how much your doctor's visits and prescription drugs are when you go to the pharmacy. So cash flow wise, maybe that's a scenario for you, depending on your cash flow situation, that it's better to choose a copay plan. If you've had the HSA for the last 5 years and you've been putting money in it, then in that case, you're still going to want to choose an HSA plan because you're going to have that money saved up for any cash flow situation. But if this is your first year on the plan, you may want to think about what's the best for you cash flow wise. The last scenario is just, what if I have cash flow? The last scenario is, what if I have a year with really high medical costs? And this is an example of somebody with heart disease or diabetes. And in this scenario, 5 prescription drugs a month, times 12 months is 60 a year. 1 doctor's visit a month. Over the course of a year, that's 12 doctor's visits. We've got an MRI or X-ray of $1,500 in lab tests. So this is somebody who's using a lot of the health care. And in this scenario, plan option 3 for the S network is going to be the very best because you've limited your exposure the most, or the liability. And what I mean by that is your deductible is actually the very lowest, that's the lowest deductible plan. Plan option 3, $1,700 deductible. After that, Blue Cross starts paying 80%, and you pay 20%, until the most you could possibly spend is $3,500. That's your cap. And so if you know you're going to have a lot of medical expenses, you're going to want to choose option 3, or if you have the need to be in the P network, in that case you choose option 4. If you chose option 5 or 6, those are the less expensive HSA plans. You would end up spending more out of your pocket. The premiums would be a little bit less. As you can see, they cost less. But your exposure at a $2,500 or $3,000 deductible and a higher out-of-pocket, you ended up spending more on your healthcare expenses for a total cost of about $4,000. And then on plan option 1 or 2, we mentioned at the very beginning that these copays for doctor's visits and prescription drugs, they're not counting towards your deductible. So that's an additional cost that starts to add up. And so if you have a lot of copays, that could actually make your plan, over the course of the year, you'd spend over $5,000. We've talked about that a lot in the past. So that's the 4 scenarios in the health plan, the private exchange diagram. Any questions about anything we just walked through or how the plans work? If you choose plan 3, 4, 5, or 6, there's still an HSA option. To highlight what that HSA is, it's the most tax advantaged account, of course, the government's ever allowed. It allows you to put money into it pre-tax, if you'd like. Any money that you put in there pre-tax, it's yours. It rolls over from year to year, it continues to grow. It earns interest and grows tax-free. If you spend money out of that account on medical expenses, it's spent tax-free. Howell Allen's going to continue to put $600 in for an individual and $1,200 for employee, spouse, employee, child, or family. And again, of course, you never lose the money in this account. If you ever leave Howell Allen, the account and any money that you put into it up to that point goes with you. And of course, if you don't spend it, it just acts as extra retirement money, meaning at 65, you can continue to spend it on medical expenses tax-free, but you can also spend it on anything else you'd like. You could buy Christmas presents with it or a new car, and that is just, it's spent after tax at that time. The 2015 maximum for your HSA contribution, I know that's at the bottom, it's $3,350 for individuals, $6,650 for employee plus spouse, employee plus child, or family. If you're 55 or older, you can add $1,000 to either of those numbers. Yeah, that's the 2015 maximum. If you get the company's portion of the $600 or $1,200, you need to subtract that from those maximums because the $3,350 is the most you can put in with the companies as well. So it's not $3,950. It's actually $2,750 is how much you can put in. Any questions about the HSA? So that's all that I have on the health plan. Before I move on to the dental and the vision, the rest of it's going to go pretty quick. Any questions about the health? Great.
People do realize with the S, they put the HCA, right?
So just to highlight, and this hasn't changed, but if you're on the S network, it does not include HCA facilities. HCA facilities, and I may leave some out, but it's like Murfreesboro, Centennial, of course, here in town, Dixon, it's Horizon Medical Center out in Dixon, Hendersonville Medical Center out in Hendersonville, Summit Skyline, and Southern Hills are all HCA facilities. So if that's your hospital of preferred choice, that is an HCA facility, and you want to choose the P network. Another thing to highlight, and this started last year, has anybody out, a little bit of activity, has anybody ever asked or heard the rumor or heard that tale that if you get taken by an ambulance to an out-of-network hospital, then you were taken by ambulance, it's going to be covered as in-network. Has anybody ever heard that? That like if I get taken to that hospital,
But it wouldn't be.
that it wouldn't be.
It wouldn't be.
It will not be covered as in-network.
Yeah.
So some
It
people
can
just
be
say,
appealed.
well, if I got taken by helicopter
'Cause I've done it.
to an out-of-network hospital, then it's got to be covered, right? It's not. It's going to be covered as out-of-network. So we just want to make sure everybody knows that in case that ever were to happen.
If somebody's knocked out, they have no choice.
Right. Really. All right, hey, we have a question, and we are
You
recording.
said there was $1,700 on some of these plans, it's $1,700 deductible.
Yes.
After you hit the $1,700, it's gonna pay 80%.
Yes.
Okay, and then you said the maximum amount out of pocket was $3,500.
Yes.
Then are they gonna pay 100% after that?
They're going to pay 100% after that.
Okay.
On any of these plans, once you've reached the out-of-pocket, Blue Cross is going to pay 100%. Good question. Yes.
Is the only difference in all the S policies, the deductible?
Yes.
That's the only difference.
The deductible and out-of-pocket, right, the small nuances down here, but the 5S plans, number 1, 2, 3, 5, 6,
All the same.
they're all on the S network.
Okay.
They just change a little bit about the plan designs so that you can either have a lower deductible or lower out-of-pocket,
Okay.
higher deductible, higher out-of-pocket.
And that deductible on that S plan is $2,500 for an individual, right?
On plan 1.
Okay, okay, I see what you, okay.
Questions? Any other questions? All right, we'll go ahead and talk about Delta Dental. The good news is nothing's changing with Delta on the plan, so your preventative still covered 100%, basic's covered at 80%, major's covered at 60%. If you have to have basic or major work done, there's a $50 deductible for individuals or a $150 deductible for families. The annual maximum is still $2,000 per subscriber, which is really nice. That's the highest one I actually ever run into. Any questions about the Delta?
Just what's the difference? I know you said for, if you just had it for individual, that it's just a couple of dollars, but what's the difference if you have your family on dental?
That's a great question. It's about $1.50 per pay period
For family?
for family.
Okay, a dollar, okay,
Than it was.
Okay.
About $3 a month,
okay,
but
okay,
under that.
okay.
And all of that's going to be available in the Bernie portal, which you can go into right after this meeting and see what the costs are. The VSP, nothing's changing from last year. So the benefits are the same. The exams are $10 copay, lenses $25 copay, frame allowance $130, or contact allowance of $130. And then the long and short-term disability with Lincoln. Of course, the long-term disability is 100% employer paid, so it's there, of course, without you even really knowing about it until you actually need it. And just to highlight, these aren't like Aflac-type plans. This actually insures your paycheck in case something ever happened. And so your long-term disability would kick in after you'd missed work for 180 days. And we'll talk about how you get to 180 days. But once you've missed work for 180 days, long-term disability would kick in and start paying 60% of your actual paycheck up to a maximum of $5,000 a month. I mean, this would pay every month until you reach Social Security normal retirement age. And so that would essentially, take care of you, reimburse you, and not an indemnity plan, not just because you had an accident, but it would just replace your income at that point. 180 days would be a long time to go without a paycheck, so the company pays for everybody to have short-term disability. Short-term disability is once you've missed work for 30 days due to either injury or illness, so once you've been out of work for 30 days due to injury or illness, you'd start getting 60% of your weekly earnings to a maximum of $500 a week. And you'd get that every week until you got to the 180 days and your long-term disability kicked in. Basically, that 22 weeks, you'd be getting paid. There is an opportunity that a lot of you have taken advantage of in the past, and that's to buy up your short-term disability or basically reduce the elimination period. So that if you missed work due to an injury after day one or after day 0, on day 1, you'd start getting 60% of your weekly earnings, or up to 7 days on an illness, you'd start getting 60% of your earnings to replace your income. And you get that every week until the company's short-term disability and long-term disability kicked in. So it would basically, there it is. It would give you 3 more weeks of coverage so that you never, if it was an injury, you'd never miss a week of pay. And if it was an illness, you'd miss 1 week of pay. Again, this is not open enrollment for the short term buy-up. If you have it now, you can continue to keep it. And it'll actually tell you how much it is in the Bernie portal this year. If you don't have it but you want to apply for it, you can do that. You'll have to fill out an evidence of insurability form. So in the past, you haven't been able to see the rates in the enrollment system. Now you'll be able to see the rates in the short term. Again, if you want to sign up for it, you can. You'll have to fill out some evidence of insurability. The company is continuing to pay for 100% coverage on a life insurance plan that has a $20,000 benefit in case you ever had to claim it. It includes accidental death and dismemberment as an additional $20,000. So the company pays for everybody to have this. Because you'll have this, you'll get to name your beneficiary in the Bernie portal again. And in there, you'll be able to decide if you want to give it all to one person or split it up or name contingent beneficiaries. If you have voluntary life, you'll be able to continue that voluntary life just like you have in the past. It will only cost more. It will only cost more if you've aged into a new age band. If you want to apply for it and you didn't do it when you were a new hire or at the open enrollment period, you'll have to fill out evidence of insurability to apply for it this year. Again, so that means this is not open enrollment. You can't just go in and select however much you want. We've helped a lot of people here at Howell Allen with our retail store model. We've got non-commissioned advisors who help people figure out what the best thing is for them to do, for their families, or even when they turn 65 and go on to Medicare. And so we're able to take all of the moving parts of healthcare. Maybe it's that you're looking at your group plan, your spouse's plan, and maybe like TRICARE if you're ex-military or husband's ex-military. It's really difficult to do because they all cost different amounts and they all have different benefits. And so if you want to sit down with somebody and go through something like that, we're able to help you do that. If you're aging into Medicare, then great. It's actually probably going to be best for you to go on to Medicare. If you just want to evaluate if it is better or not, we're able to help you do that because we can compare the Howell Allen plan to how much Medicare would cost and what benefits you get. A good time to do this is now during open enrollment. Also, when you turn 65 throughout the year, that gives you the ability to go in there and look as well. Also, if your spouse has open enrollment at a different time of year, maybe they have a July 1 renewal, you would be able to look at and compare at that time as well. There's 3 stores. One's by Baja Burrito next to 100 Oaks, across the street from 100 Oaks, Vanderbilt. The closest one to here is the one by Harding and White Bridge Road at that intersection. There's a third one down in Cool Springs. So how to enroll. We've all been using the Bernie portal now for a few years. It continues to get better and better. And if you've already been in it, then you've seen that it's gotten a lot better. So after this meeting, everybody can go online and see the costs for all the plans. They can make their elections.
We need to be here to get in the Bernie portal, or can we do that from home?
You can do it from home.
Okay.
You can do it. You could do it at work. You could do it from any computer with the internet
Okay.
or your phone.
What's the address to do that?
I'm going to give that out in just a second.
I'm sorry.
No problem.
AVG cloud.
So when you go in to log in, you'll see the screen looks like this. There's a video, but if you just click Get Started at the very bottom, you'll update your basic information, and you'll want to update your salary because that's what your short-term disability would be based off of. If you didn't update your salary and it was too low, you wouldn't get the benefit that you should. If you need to update like your address or that's changed, that's really easy to do. You can just go into your account up at the top. If you want to add any dependents to any of the plans, you'll do that right there at the very beginning. So maybe you want to add a dependent to dental or vision, you can do that. You just need to include them here. And then you're going to get to a screen that looks like this. On the left-hand side, there's all the benefits listed: health, dental, vision, all the way down through life and the HSA. So that's over there on the left. You'll click on the health tab, and you'll be able to see the 6 plans that are listed. Right? They've got a little description next to them, but Plan 1 in the portal matches Plan 1 on your sheet here. When you select one, you'll be able to see all the prices of the plan. So like in here, I just picked plan 3, and there's the cost down at the bottom. And when I select one of those costs, it's going to go up into my cart in the top right-hand corner. And I'll be able to track that as I make all my selections. Now, just because you selected one, you can still go back and make a change, anytime throughout open enrollment. To get to the next couple of benefits, you'll click on that tab on the left. So once you make your health selection or you want to move on, click on the dental. You'll actually click on the word dental. And you'll be able to drop down the box to select your dental plan, or you can waive. Of course, you can waive any of these benefits that aren't employer paid. So you can waive, but if you select the vision plan, you'll make your selection and the cost will go over there into your cart. On the voluntary life, you're just going to be able to click that I understand I want to keep what I've had. If you want to make a change to your voluntary life, that has to be done outside of Bernie Portal, and it'll take some paperwork, and we can help you do that. But on the short-term disability, there's going to be one line for short-term over here, one tab. When you click on it, there's 2 options. There's the core and the buyout. Right? The core, everybody gets it. So if you just want the core, click on the core and it'll say that you just want to accept it and then it's 100% employer paid. If you want the buy-up or you want to keep the buy-up, click on the buy-up option and you'll be able to see how much it cost you to add that, or how much you're going to get charged this year because you already have it. And then that'll go over into your cart. Same on the LTD, it'll show you how much the company's paying towards LTD for you to have that now. On FSA and HSA, really quick to point out here. On the copay plan, of course, you can have an FSA. That FSA allows you to pay for medical expenses pre-tax. It is a use it or lose it account. So if you don't use the money at the end of the year, you lose it. There's a small amount that you can roll over to the next year. I think it's about $500 that you can roll over for 3 months and use it over that time period. That FSA option will actually still be there even if you choose the HSA plan. You're like, well, crap, wait a second, why would I do that? In the past, we've had a couple of people choose the HSA plan but not get an HSA and choose an FSA. The one reason to do that is because you could put in money for medical expenses into your FSA right up front. And that, if you elected to put $2,500, the maximum amount, into your FSA, you would have $2,500 available on day 1. If you chose to do that, you could not have an HSA. You waive your right to have one of those. So we'll know that you chose an FSA if you choose an HSA plan, and then you won't get your HSA. So most people, 99% of people who choose an HSA plan will just put in money in their HSA. But if you wanted money up front, there's a way to do that, and that's to choose the FSA. If you don't want the FSA, you'll just waive it, right? It'll have a little drop-down box, and just waive the FSA. On the HSA, you'll be able to see how much the company's putting in, your employer, and then how much you want to put in. You can select however much you want to put in per pay period. Once you've made all your selections, you get to name your beneficiaries. This has gotten intermittently better. You can name up to like 3 or 4 beneficiaries for the amount, and then you can name contingent beneficiaries. And you can name those beneficiaries and split the amount however you'd like. You can give 10% to one, 90% to the other, or you can split it amongst all of them. Once you've named your beneficiaries, you'll see a summary of all of your elections. At the bottom of this, there will be a button that says I agree. We need everybody by the 12th to go in and click I agree to those elections. And when you do, it'll have a little pop-up box that says, are you sure you agree? This is your e-signature. This is the box that lets us know that this is what you want. You can only make changes to these elections if you have a qualifying event. So that's like getting married, getting divorced, having a baby, or loss of coverage, for examples. Once you do that, when you click OK to that box, it's going to email Marlise what you elected. It's going to send an email to you of your election, so that's how you'll know you're done. You'll get an email of your elections. It's also going to let the payroll know how much to deduct, and it's going to let the carriers know, because this is now integrated with the carriers. So whatever shows up in here is what you're going to have with the carriers. In the Bernie portal, in order to get there, you'll go to bernieportal.com and we'll email that link out. So it'll be in your email and there'll be a little instruction page. When you go to bernieportal.com, you'll click in the top right hand corner and just click log in and use your same user info. If you've lost your user info from last year, it'll send you your password. If you don't have anything from that, we've got an email address that you can email to get what you need. Inside the Bernie portal, there's still the ability to use Healthcare Blue Book or see your HSA balance through HSA Bank. We still have the same people, working on this account. So Amber is still at Ask.Bernie. She helps with EOBs that you may not understand, or you think you get a bill that's coded incorrectly. We can help with that and help figure out, what went wrong. If you need help with the Bernie portal because you can't get your username or your password, you can email Kendra at portal.bernie@bernardhealth.com, and we'll send this out, by the way, to everybody. Our nurse Deanna is still price shopping for people at pricing.bernie@bernardhealth.com. And then if you wanted to set up an appointment at the retail store, you just want to get a hold of Bernard Health, the best way to do that is our 1-800 number, and that goes to one of 4 people that are about a block and a half away at 1900 Church Street, and they're Bernard Health employees. So that 1-800 number is a live person. And so that's all I have. I'm going to be around for questions after. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. If not, I don't have anything else. I think there's a drawing that we're going to have.